You think you're ready to face some of life's most uncomfortable truths. I'm warning you, they're not for the faint of heart, but here's a hint. The secret to being happy is not in winning all the battles, but in learning to let go of what is sinking you. The Stoic philosophy already taught us centuries ago, happiness is not a gift from heaven, it's a daily construction, and that includes those hard truths that we avoid so much. Get ready for a journey that won't sugarcoat reality but can transform how you face it, from understanding that perfection is a myth to accepting that you can't control everything. If you're looking for magical solutions, this isn't your place. But if you want to open your eyes and live better, stay here. Come the 10 hard truths you need to finally enjoy life. Ready? Well, don't you lose the last one, because it will leave you speechless. But before you start, listen to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom contained in this material. In a bustling city lived a talented chef named Martin. His restaurant, The Perfect Flavor, was famous for its exquisite dishes and its innovative cuisine. But what few knew was that behind each dish Martin fought an internal battle. He never felt good enough. Martin, he was a perfectionist. He spent sleepless nights tweaking recipes and looking for unique ingredients. However, he always found flaws in his work. One night after the restaurant closed, he received a negative review online. The food is okay, but nothing spectacular, he said. That review devastated him. That same night, while he was cleaning the kitchen, Don Esteban, a regular customer and retired culinary critic, entered, noticed the sadness in Martin's eyes, and asked him what was going on. Martin confessed, "I feel like it's never enough, that I always fail at something." Don Esteban, wise and calm, smiled and said, "Martin, there's something you need to understand. No matter how good you are, there will always be someone who thinks you can do better. The real question isn't if you're perfect, it's if you love what you do. If you cook from the heart, your work is already valuable, no matter what others say." Those words resonated in Martin that night. Instead of looking for mistakes, decided to remember why he loved to cook. The aroma of fresh herbs, the sound of sparkling oil rotating, the smiles of those who tasted his dishes. From then, he stopped obsessing over perfection and began to enjoy every moment in the kitchen. Over time, The Perfect Flavor became even more popular. Not because he pursued an unattainable ideal, but because Martin found joy and authenticity in what he did. He learned that not everyone could like it, but he could be proud of himself. The moral of this story is that in life there are truths that we cannot avoid. We will never be perfect and never please everyone. But if we put our heart into what we do, that will be enough, and even more important, it will be real. Before starting with the first lesson, if you find these videos useful, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to stay informed about the latest news. We start. 1. Happiness is not a destination. It's a journey. Happiness, that word that we all want, but that seems so elusive. They sell it to us as if it were a final destination, as if life were a toll road, and in the end, at the last junction just before the exit, we found that blessed happiness. But spoiler alert, it's not like that. If you thought that at the end of the tunnel there's a sign that says "Gone to Paradise," let me tell you that there isn't. Happiness is not something you achieve, it's something you live. It's enjoyed as you move forward, not when you get somewhere in particular. Accepting this idea is harder than it seems. We live in a world that bombards us with promises of super happiness in the form of shopping, travel, or the next big goal in life. But what happens when we get there? What is clear is that when we arrive at that ideal place, we find that happiness, like a good joke that we already know by heart, loses its charm. So why not better enjoy the process? Don't the Stoics misunderstand me? That ancient school of thought that already told us that happiness does not depend on external factors. They will confirm it to you. You don't have to wait to have everything under control to be happy. Life is full of ups and downs like a roller coaster. One might think that happiness comes only at the top, when everything is going well, but the reality is that it is all the way around. In fear before the first descent, in laughter when someone screams of pure emotion, and the feeling of being alive. Although the trip is somewhat uncomfortable after all, what would be the point of reaching the top if you have not enjoyed the views and the company along the way? However, accepting this idea requires a little courage, because it implies letting go of that fantasy that everything has to be perfect, that things are not always going to go as you want it to be. It is one of those hard realities that, however uncomfortable they may be, we must accept. If we want to live a happy life, sometimes it is necessary to make peace with what we cannot control, and that is one of the wisest lessons of Stoic philosophy. Life is not about accumulating victories, but about learning to be at peace with defeats, of knowing that every step counts, no matter if you are at the top or at the bottom of the abyss. Then how to start enjoy this trip? First, change the perspective. Stop waiting for happiness to come suddenly, as if it were a birthday present. Happiness is in the small moments, in the morning cup of coffee, in that time with friends, in the hugs. What do you give? Second, accept that the road has bumps, that you will not always have everything resolved, and that's okay. Life is not a movie in which everything falls into place. In the end, it's an ever-changing script, and the real magic is in how you decide to play it. In the end, what really matters is not where you're going, but how you enjoy every step you take along the way. If you're hoping to be happy, only when you get to that perfect place will you be waiting for a lifetime. Happiness is not a destination to get to. It's the journey itself, with everything what it brings with it. As they say out there, to live is to learn to enjoy every step, not just goal 2. Stop comparing yourself. You've realized how easy it is to compare yourself with others. Of course, in a world where everyone seems to have everything figured out and you're still looking for the reset button in your life. But you know that the big problem here isn't not having everything or not being perfect. The real problem is that you continue to think that what others have is the treasure map that you are missing. But what if I told you that you don't need that map? That the key is to accept yourself just as you are, without comparisons or expectations of others. We live in a time where social networks flood us with perfect lives, or at least those that try to look like it bombard us with images of people who seem to have everything under control, a dream body, a brilliant career, and a social life that could make any Hollywood star envy. And you, of course, look in the mirror and think, why am I not like them? Why haven't I gotten to where I want to be? And that's when the storm starts in your head. But stop for a moment. You really believe that the lives of others it's as perfect as it seems? The truth is that we all, absolutely all of us, have our internal struggles. If the Stoics could give you one piece of advice, it would be this: don't compare yourself, because everyone has their own battle and yours is enough. The comparison only feeds dissatisfaction and in the long term distances you from your true essence. So what to do? The solution is not to complicate your life, but to simplify it. Stop trying to be someone who you don't have to fit into a clip art. You can imagine if movie stars had to act according to what others expect of them. Most of them would fail miserably. Each of us has our own path, our own rhythm, and most importantly, our own authenticity. That's what makes you unique, what makes you valuable. And if you still feel that pressure to live up, to think about this: you really want to be a copy of someone else, or you prefer to be the best version of yourself, with your own flaws, but also with your strengths? As the Stoics would say, true freedom is in accepting who you are. Then proceed at your own speed. The daily practice of self-compassion is an easy way to begin escaping this prison of comparisons. Treat yourself with kindness, as you would be with a good friend. Instead of punishing yourself for not meeting the standards that the world imposes, congratulate yourself for the advances, no matter how small. Each step counts. True happiness is not in being perfect, but in being you, with your lights and shadows. And if you ever feel overwhelmed by social expectations, remember that what really matters is your inner peace. No one else can give it, or external achievements. At the end of the day, you are enough, just as you are. And if you don't believe it, start repeating it until you feel it. Because in reality, no one better than you to be you. Constant comparison only creates emptiness, and that emptiness is what takes you away from your authentic self. Stop looking outside for what is already inside you. Embracing your authenticity is the first step towards a happy life. No, you have to be no one else to be enough. You just have to be you. As Marcus Aurelius said, the greatest strength is in accepting who you are without trying to be who you are not. 3. Pain is a natural part of growth. Surely you have heard that famous phrase of everything it happens for something, as if pain were a simple passing anecdote, something that can be disguised with a couple of beautiful words. But you really believe that the pain goes away so easily with a sentence? Sure, you can try to ignore it or evade it, but what the pain is really doing is calling your attention. And no, it is not inviting you for coffee. Pain is not the villain that drags you into the abyss. It is more of a teacher. Although sometimes his teaching style is not the most delicate, and the worst thing is that there is no escape. No matter what you do, suffering is part of growth. Think about it: one moment at a time that you have been in an uncomfortable situation, whether it is a failure, a loss, or a disappointment, you have not only learned something new, but you have also grown. And no, I am not saying that pain is fun, much less that you should seek it out as if it were the latest fashionable toy. What I mean is that pain, although uncomfortable, has a special ability to put you in front of yourself and make you thinking what I can learn from this is not a whim of the universe. If you don't understand that suffering is inevitable, it's like going to the gym and expecting to gain muscles without lifting weights. Pain is the nightmare that makes you wake up to reality. Now you will wonder how I faced this without falling into easy despair, or at least relatively easy. First, accept that pain is not the end of the world. Throughout history, the Stoics, those philosophers so serious that they seem to have everything under control, made it clear to us that adversity is not something that should crumble. Noos, according to them, the key is in how we interpret circumstances, pain, suffering. Well, if you look at it from a Stoic perspective, all this is an opportunity to strengthen character, to test your emotional resistance. It is not a matter of avoiding it, but of seeing how, then, grow from it. But not only ancient philosophers have the answer. Even science has shown us that pain in its crudest form can help you develop new skills and resilience. Imagine that pain is like a muscle and you are the gym. If you avoid it, that muscle weakens, but if you face it, you become stronger, wiser. Of course, it's not easy, but the best things rarely are, and if you find it too difficult, you can always resort to meditation, or even the simple fact of taking a breath and observing what you feel without judging it. Over time, you will see that pain no longer has so much power over you. In the end, the important thing is to understand that pain is not the enemy, it is only a part of the process. And when you accept it, when you understand that suffering is not a mistake of the universe, but a tool for growth, something changes. Don't let the fear of pain control you. Use each difficult experience as one more stepping stone to your best version, because in the end, and even if you don't like it, listen to this, life is not a bed of roses, but it is a garden where thorns also have their place. As a wise Stoic proverb says, pain is the price we pay for living a full life. Is for perfection doesn't exist. Have you ever sat down to watch a perfect movie, the one that has all the details, everything in its place, and you felt a little frustrated for not being able to achieve that perfection? Come on, the world seems to revolve around an idea of perfection that we all pursue, as if it were the Holy Grail. But what if I told you that perfection not only does not exist, but is a myth that is stealing your peace and time? We live in a world that glorifies the impeccable. From social networks to television commercials, there is always something that reminds us that we must be better, more handsome, more intelligent, more productive. It sounds familiar to you, but here is the great revelation. Perfection does not exist. There is no secret manual of life. Let him tell you how to be a human being without faults. The Stoics already knew it and made it clear to us that life is not designed for you to be perfect, but for you to learn to be better with what you have. And here is the trick: the mistake, the defect, the imperfection are the keys. Those moments of failures and stumbles are the ones that really teach us to live. Every time something does not go as if you were hoping for, it's not a sign that everything is wrong, but that you have a chance to learn something new about yourself. The truth is that we spend our lives running away from imperfection, but in the end, the imperfect moments are what give us the true beauty of existence. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds very nice, but how do I face my failures without falling into despair? It's a good question, because accepting imperfection is not so simple. But don't worry, there is a way to deal with it. First, change your perspective. Instead of seeing failures as something that sinks you, look at them as opportunities. Your project did not turn out as you wanted. Great, now you know what not to do. Next time, it is like baking a cake and realizing that you were missing an important ingredient. Next time you will know that the recipe has a hidden trick. Then be kind to yourself. Being a relentless critic only you to anxiety. Life is not about meeting an unattainable standard. On the contrary, it is about being human with all that implies: your mistakes, your flaws, your imperfections. Accept that it is okay not to have everything under control, and do not take everything so seriously. Have you ever looked at someone who is take everything too seriously? It's almost unbearable, right? The same goes for you. Relax a little. There are things you just can't control, and instead of fighting them, why don't you take life with a little more humor? Remember that tragedies aren't that big if you allow yourself to laugh at them a little. Life is not a contest of perfection or a model that you should follow to the letter. True freedom comes when you accept that failures, stumbles, and even moments of chaos are part of what makes you human. As the Stoics said, what you can't control is not worth your energy, so instead of chasing perfection, start embracing imperfection deep down. That's what really makes life more interesting. As Epictetus said, chasing perfection is like trying to catch the wind. No matter how much you run, you'll never make it. 5. Time doesn't recover. You've realized what you're doing with time. You go to the future where you worry about everything that hasn't happened yet, or you get stuck in the past reliving mistakes like you can do something about it, and in the middle of it all, the present. The only moment you can really control passes by. What nice truth we live in a world that pushes us to do everything for tomorrow, that tells you that the future will be solved when it arrives, but the truth is that when that future arrives you will probably be in the same thing, waiting and postponing, trapped in the same wheel of thoughts. Procrastination, that national sport in which we all participate, is like an invisible enemy that steals your time without you realizing. The worst, it's all about that time not coming back in the end. You can't go back in time or buy extra minutes in a store. The time you waste today is gone forever. But what if I told you that the key to living a happier and less stressed life is to accept a simple but hard truth? Here it goes. Time can't get it back. It may sound cliche, but it's one of the most important things you can do. Those lessons that the Stoics, with their philosophy of accepting reality as it is, already knew thousands of years ago. They understood that while you torment yourself for what you cannot control, you lose the only thing you really have, the now. First, you need to make a deal with yourself, commit not to live in the "and if I will not live in it, tomorrow the future, if it comes, will come by itself, and the past, well, it's over." Thinking that the future is going to be fixed by magic. It's like waiting for the sun to rise in the middle of the storm without moving a millimeter. It's just a fantasy. What you have to do is look around you, see what's really happening now, and act accordingly. If you realize procrastination is the perfect disguise for despair, we say, "I'll do it later," because we dread the present moment, the effort it takes to take that first step. But the secret is to do it now, even if it's a small step. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. Just do what you can. But do it now, and if you ever have doubts, remember the words of the Stoics: control is in what you do today, not in what you plan to do tomorrow. There are things outside of your control, and the only thing you can do is react to them in the best possible way. Don't wear yourself out chasing the unattainable, because in the end what really matters is what you build every day with the decisions you make in the here and now. You know, that moment that gives you the opportunity to act. Don't be fooled by distractions, because when you look back, the only thing you will have left will be the memory of what you did not of what you wanted to do in the end. It doesn't matter how many plans you have, how many goals you set, or how many days you think you have left. The only thing you have is now, so take advantage of the time and live what really matters to you, because when you leave there will be no turning back. Living trapped between the past and the future will not make you happy, but living here and now with purpose and without fear is the key to a full life. Record yourself with fire. What I'm going to tell you, my friend, time is the only resource you can't get back. Make every moment count. 6. What you don't control shouldn't control you. I'm going to tell you seriously. Life is not a remote control that you can handle at your whim. You'd like to put a pause when something bothers you, to go back when you made a mistake, and move forward quickly when things are going well. But guess what? Reality doesn't work like that. Accepting it can be difficult but liberating. If you allow yourself to let go of all that energy you spend trying to control the uncontrollable. Have you ever thought about how much time you spend obsessed with something you can't change? It's as if you had a friend who keeps telling you the same bad joke over and over again, and you for some reason keep listening. You may not be able to change the past or someone else's attitude or even the weather, and for the record you tried with all those comments about the sun and the sea. But there is something you can control: how you deal with that. The Stoic philosophy reminds us that what is important is not what happens to you, but how you interpret it now. What I'm going to say, you knew that when you obsess over what you can't change, you're actually giving up control of your well-being to something outside of you. You're giving away your inner peace for something that has no solution. It's like a dog chasing its own tail. It spins, runs, gets tired, and in the end it hasn't advanced. In fact, it has exhausted, and you, with your anguish about something that has already happened, you are also exhausting yourself. But what if I told you that there is a way to stop this endless wheel of useless thoughts? If you really dared to accept that there are things you do not control, you could start to direct your energy towards what you can change. First, accept that not everything depends on you. What you cannot modify is not worth the effort. You know what's happening. You'll run out of strength, and the rock will still be there if you try to push it with your bare hands. However, if you stop fighting it, you can start moving around and concentrate on what you can do, your attitude, your choices, your actions, and how to do it. I'll start by giving you a few keys. Identify what you can influence, which is your attitude, your responses, and your subsequent life choices. Learn to let go. Picture your mind as a basket filled with stones. Each stone stands for something that, if you allow it to continue occupying space in your life, you will never be able to alter. your basket is going to fill up with weight, and the only thing you're going to carry is a lot of frustration. But if you slowly let go of those stones, you'll be left alone with the essentials, with what really propels you forward, and believe me, you will feel lighter. Finally, remember that the Stoics already talked about this centuries ago. They taught us that our inner peace is in our ability to distinguish what we can control and what we can't. If you let what you can't control you, you will have become a slave to circumstances. If you choose to focus on what you can change, you become the master of your destiny. So the next time you find yourself thinking about something that is out of your reach, remember that you don't have to carry it. Don't waste your strength on what you can't control. Letting go of the unnecessary is the key to living happier, calmer, and above all freer. As Carl Jung said, life is not measured by what, but by how you choose to answer it. 7. Loneliness doesn't mean being alone. Have you ever had that moment when you feel so lonely that even the sound of your own breath seems uncomfortable? That feeling of being alone in the universe with no one around you is something we all encounter at some point. But here's one of those hard truths you don't expect. Loneliness. No, it is synonymous with abandonment, although the world tells you that loneliness is an abysmal emptiness. The Stoic philosophy invites us to see things from another perspective, because really, loneliness can be your best ally if you learn to accept and understand it. You have wondered why it scares you so much to be alone. I am not just talking about being physically alone, but about those moments when you are alone with yourself. The Stoics, those wise men of the past, had of course that loneliness should not be seen as torture. In fact, they accepted solitude as an opportunity to reflect, to know oneself better, and above all to learn to be at peace with oneself. However, here is the trap. We live surrounded by so much noise from so many people that when we are alone with our thoughts, the fear of the unknown invades us. The big mistake is to believe that if we are alone, we are abandoned. The key to enjoying solitude without feeling that we are abandoned is to change the focus. Imagine that your mind is like a garden. If you do not take care of it, it becomes full of weeds, negative thoughts, doubts, fear. But if you take the time to take care of it, you can turn that garden into a place where peace and serenity flourish. How do you do it? First, accepting that being alone does not make you less valuable or less loved. Being alone is an opportunity to get to know yourself without distractions. It allows you to reconnect with your being, with your passions, your dreams, and your fears without the constant judgment of others. And although it may seem a little strange, you can start enjoying your own company without needing to seek validation from others. The Stoics spoke of the importance of emotional self-sufficiency. Being alone for them, it was not a punishment but a practice to strengthen the mind. It is true, there are days when uncomfortable thoughts invade your head, but learning to handle them is like learning to ride a bicycle. At first you fall a couple of times, but then you become an expert. Here are some easy tips on how to do it. Start with short bursts of solitude. You don't have to spend an entire weekend, but maybe a few minutes every day to detach from the outside world, whether it's through a walk, a book, or just being quiet. The key is to learn to enjoy your own company without feeling like you're losing yourself. Solitude is not a sign of impending doom or a punishment from God, but rather a space that, with proper management, can be a powerful tool for your personal development. Don't let your fear of solitude cause you to lose yourself. Instead, view it as a chance to fill your life with peace and self-awareness. As the Stoics once said, tranquility depends on how we manage our minds, not on the outside world. So the next time you find yourself alone, instead of regretting, take advantage of that moment to cultivate your inner well-being. Loneliness, well understood, it's rather a hug, not a separation. As Gandhi, if you don't know how to be alone, you'll never know how to truly accompany yourself. 8. Don't live chained to expectations. Expectations are like those high-heeled shoes. At first they seem elegant. They make you feel powerful, but over time they destroy your feet. The same happens with expectations in life. We create perfect scenarios. We idealize the future and we think that things should be a specific way, when in reality life doesn't ask permission to take us down unexpected paths. But what happens when things don't go as expected? There begins the party of frustration, anger, and of course self-criticism is a vicious circle that never ends. And the worst thing is that all this happens in our head. Yes, that little mental prison in which we get ourselves by doubting reality and clinging to what should be instead of accepting what is. Expectations are like those stories we tell ourselves before going to sleep. I'm going to lose 10 kilograms this year. I'm going to be the CEO of a large company, and I'm going to be happy every day. Of course, the intentions are good because we all want the best for ourselves. The problem arises when we forget that the road to those goals is not paved or has signs that say everything will be fine. We encounter unforeseen events, we fall, and when we don't fulfill our own wish list, we feel like failures. The Stoics believe that there are some things we cannot control, like the weather, other people's opinions, or even traffic, but we can control how we respond to these circumstances. Living realistically does not mean giving up on our goals or aspirations, but rather acknowledging that sometimes expectations are not met, and that this is not a defeat but rather a chance to grow, adapt, and find other forms of happiness. Then you could ask, what do you do with all that? Start by substituting attainable objectives for irrational expectations. It's not about stopping dreaming, but about doing it with your feet on the ground. You can continue to aspire to great things, but do it knowing that falls are part of the process, not an insurmountable obstacle. The key is to let go of control instead of wondering why it doesn't happen the way I want. To try to ask yourself what I can do with what I have now. Accepting imperfection is a superpower because when you stop fighting against the current, you realize that you can swim much more easily. Another technique is to practice gratitude. Stoic philosophy teaches us that a calm mind does not depend on what happens outside, but on how we react to it. Being grateful for what you already have and for what you learn along the way can alleviate the frustration of not reaching an immediate goal. In fact, even failures are hidden lessons. If you want to live with peace begins by freeing your mind from the chains of expectations. Living realistically does not mean surrendering, but adjusting to what life offers you. Without resisting every inconvenience, happiness is not in what you plan, but in how you navigate what really happens. Learning to let go is a way to win, and when you stop expecting everything to be perfect, it is when you really find freedom. Next, remember that life is an unpredictable adventure, and if you take it easy, the journey can be much more interesting than any destination you had planned. As Nelson Mandela said, life is not perfect, but the acceptance of its imperfection is true happiness. Failure is not the end, it is just the beginning. It has happened to you. At least when you're facing a challenge, the first thing you think is, and if I fail, that small thought can be the beginning of the end, not because failure has defeated you, but because you yourself have given up before your time. The fear of failure, that invisible monster that paralyzes you, is there lurking, but the truth is that in reality it is just an illusion. And here comes the great revelation. Failure is not the end. It is. The problem is that we haven't been taught to see failure as an ally. We've been put in our heads the idea that failure is the enemy that wants to destroy our dreams. How absurd it is to imagine that you're climbing a mountain. Every time you slip and fall, you might think you'll never make it to the top, right? But what if every fall was just an opportunity to adjust your technique and to keep climbing? That is failure. It is not an end point. It is one more rung on the ladder to success. The Stoics understood it perfectly. They did not see failure as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to grow. According to their philosophy, difficulties are not something to be avoided, but something that strengthens us. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, said that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond, and if our response to failure is to get up again and again, then failure loses all its power over us. First, accept that the fear of failure is normal. We all feel it at some point. Even those who seem to have it all figured out. The important thing is not to avoid fear, but to get angry with the confidence that no matter how many times you fall, you can always get up. A powerful technique to combat this fear is to think of failure as a necessary part of the process, not as a sign that all is lost. For example, imagine that you are learning to ride a bike. At the beginning you must have fallen several times, but stop trying. Each fall does something: how to keep your balance, how to turn, how to brake without losing control. In the same way in life, each failure teaches you something valuable, even if you don't see it in a way. So the next time you face the fear of failure, remember that true failure is not falling, but staying on the ground. The fear of failure only stops you if you allow it. Accept the idea that every misstep is just an opportunity to move forward, and if you ever feel that fear consumes you, think of the Stoics who made failure their best teacher. Remember, failure is not the end, it's just the beginning. As Viktor Frankl said, the biggest failure is not having tried. Your opinion matters more than you think. You've ever stopped to think about what you think about yourself, not what your friends, family, or co-workers believe about you, but about what you really think about yourself? If I'm honest, you've probably been through more time wondering if others like you, if they meet your expectations, or if your behavior is what they expect of you, than questioning your own worth. The great irony is that no matter how hard you try to satisfy everyone, No one is going to be really happy until you are. First, we live in a world where other people's expectations seem to be the compass that directs our lives. It's as if we are constantly searching the approval of others, but what happens when you realize that that approval is ephemeral and, the worst, completely unnecessary? It is like trying to fill a bucket with holes. No matter how much you put inside, it will always be empty. The Stoics, that ancient school of philosophy that has so much to teach us, said something very important. True inner peace comes from knowing and accepting our own limitations and strengths without depending on what other people think. I know it sounds simple in theory, but putting it into practice is a whole other story. The worst thing about trying to be everything to everyone is that, deep down, you forget about yourself and stop having time for your own needs and wants because you're too busy adapting to what others expect of you. It's like looking in the mirror and instead of seeing your own desires and needs reflected in it, picture yourself as an artist painting a masterpiece. But instead of choosing colors that you like, you choose to paint what other people want to see. The end result is a work that even you are not convinced of, but others will undoubtedly admire. And empty because there is nothing sadder than living a life that is not your own. So what to do first? You have to start making your own decisions without the constant fear of disapproval. It is not about being selfish. It is about being honest with yourself. If you make decisions based on your own values, even if at first you feel uncomfortable, little by little you will realize that that discomfort disappears and what remains is a feeling of unparalleled freedom. The key is to strengthen your self-esteem. We are not talking about believing you are the center of the universe, but about learning to value yourself for who you are, not for what others expect you to be. Practice self-care. Surround yourself with people who really appreciate you, and most importantly, learn to enjoy your own company. In the end, what matters is how you see yourself. Even if you do not accept and value yourself for who you are, you will never be able to be happy because you will be condemned to live under the shadow of other people's expectations. The Stoics were clear. Happiness does not depend on external factors, not on your ability to be the owner of your life, your decisions, and your personal perception in the great theater of life. You cannot be an actor who lives to please others. Be the director of your own movie. Everyone else. My buddy, I learned a very important lesson from the experience. People who don't know who they are will constantly try to live up to others' expectations. If you've made it this far, leave a comment saying that happiness is a journey rather than a destination. To help YouTube understand that these videos are helpful to users like you, I encourage you to subscribe, turn on alerts, and leave comments. I advise you to watch the final 2 videos we suggested if this inspires us to produce more material of this kind in the future. Thank you very much for your support and time. See you on our next journey.